You've no doubt noticed the world is changing. Wealthy and powerful people are working to restructure the global economy and the institutions of power that govern the world such that we are to expect a future in which multinational organizations assume more power and conduct themselves under the guidance of organizations like the UN according to the liberal, globalist values of stakeholder capitalism. An ideological driving force within this emerging power structure is the philosophy of transhumanism, espoused by many wealthy elites as well as by the World Economic Forum. Forum founder and chairman Klaus Schwab has said that the integration of technology into our lives in the form of smart cities and nanotechnology, as well as recent advances in genetic modification, will ultimately result in a blurring of the distinction between digital and biological identities. This ideology of transhumanism and the messianical anticipation of the post-human has had a religious dimension and has been promoted by the UN since its inception. The first director of UNESCO, Julian Huxley, writing in 1957, described the history of human life, including the venerable traditions of the pagans, as rooted in ignorance, and that science transcends the tentative fumblings of our ancestors that were rooted in superstition and professional secrecy. But, he said, the human species can transcend itself by realizing new possibilities of and for his human nature, and this new belief shall be called transhumanism. More recently, UN Assistant Secretary General Robert Mueller, known as the philosopher of the United Nations, wrote, "Today our objectives and efforts must be to see the religions globalize themselves into a global spiritual renaissance in order to give us a universal, cosmic meaning of life on Earth and give birth to the first global, cosmic, universal civilization." But what does this mean in practice for pagans? A philosophy which sees the inspired wisdom of the ancients as mere superstition, and which calls for our traditions to be globalized, which essentially means that they must lose their regional and ethnic character, is inherently a philosophy of religious hatred. Pagan religions in Europe are centered on the rite of sacrificial offerings to the gods and to our ancestors. They all hold that maintenance of ancient rites is pious and proper and must not be interfered with. While we accept that any divine truth must by definition be universal, we also believe that what is universal cannot be approached universally, but that the distinctive regional and ethnic traits of indigenous religious traditions are an essential feature of what makes them a valid path to approaching the divine. Although it has grown steadily over the last century, paganism is a minority religion in Britain and across Europe in general, and pagans do not hold institutional power, nor are our interests properly represented by any of the components of power within the emerging New World Order. At this crucial juncture in the history of Europe, it is essential that polytheists come together to discuss our futures. The current political rhetoric regarding alleged common values of global humanity deliberately marginalizes, excludes, or misrepresents the deeply held beliefs of polytheists. While we do not reject technology as a religious principle like the Amish do, we reserve the right to judge for ourselves which technologies are integrated into our lives and how, according to our own religious principles, and not those enforced on us by other religious groups. These and other related issues will be the subject of discussion at the Pagan Futures Conference in London on the 25th of June this year. I'm Tom Rousell, an historian and pagan known for the Survive the Jive project, and I'll be joined at the conference by another speaker, Dr. Boisia Bila Yonger, also known as the Modern Platonist, a pagan scholar of religion who specializes in the relationship between traditional religion and modernity. There will also be a live musical performance by Walkinsman, the English pagan folk project of Dan Capp. The audience will have the opportunity to interact with all three of us during a Q&A session, and to network with other pagans and discuss the pressing matter of defining and achieving a future for paganism.